Interviews before the Marine Fisheries Commission meeting. David Sneed with the Coastal Conservation Association, Glenn Skinner with the North Carolina Fisheries Association, and Kathy Rawls with the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries. Today's interview is with David Sneed.
Hi there, Bill Hitchcock. Welcome to the program. Got a fantastic program. Actually, we have a series, a three-part series to get out to you. This is Monday, February 17th. We did interviews with three people that are going to be at the North Carolina Marine Fisheries Commission meeting, and we talked to them about what are they going to be talking about, going to be looking at when they go to the Marine Fisheries Commission meeting. A couple of things, by the way. Weather. There is a snowstorm system that's moving through North Carolina, which will probably impact, it's forecasted to impact North Carolina in Wednesday when the Marine Fisheries Commission meeting begins. Take a look at this. This is the National Weather Service forecast for Kitty Hawk on Wednesday when the meeting begins, and they're talking about on Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, 50 to 90% chance of snow on Wednesday night, 100% chance of snow, and on Thursday 80 to 50% chance of snow. Why? What's going on? Want to point this out. This little old system that's moving on through or up the coast of North Carolina. I know that on Monday they had winter storm advisories, warnings in the Raleigh-Durham area about this storm, but I showed you the forecast for Kitty Hawk. Now, the Carteret County area where I'm from they're talking about 32% chance, 32 degrees and rain. Not going to be pretty. Now, before we get going with these interviews, I wanted to point out something. We've added a new feature to the YouTube channel, the Bill Hitchcock YouTube channel. Please earmark this page. A lot of people just see the videos on their front page or at a Facebook page and don't go to all of them. Not only will you be able to access all of the videos that we do, but we put a new feature in. It's called Post. Hopefully I'm zooming that into you. And at the Post, we're doing surveys now, for example, or polling. Just put this up when I'm showing to you right now. The very first thing is, what is your confidence level for the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries to manage the state's fisheries? So far, 64% of the people say it's low. Other questions such as, should nets be banned in inside waters in North Carolina? So far, 69% say yes. So go to the Bill Hitchcock YouTube homepage, bookmark it, and when you go there, you'll see a thing called Post. If I can get to it, there it is. That's where the surveys are going to be, plus all the other stuff. And please like the channel. Now, a lot of breath there. Like I said, we just interviewed David Sneed with the Coastal Conservation Association, Glenn Skinner with the North Carolina Fisheries Association, and we're scheduled for tomorrow morning, on Tuesday morning, to interview Kathy Rawls, the director of the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries. All of this is in just a couple of days in advance of the Marine Fisheries Commission quarterly meeting. We want to know what they're thinking. We want to know what they're going to say. We want to know what they think of the whole process. Enough of me. This very first interview is with David Sneed. We just did it on Monday, February 17th. This is what he has to say about the Marine Fisheries Commission meeting. All right, David, I've had a question that came to mind before I started the interviews with Glenn Skinner or Kathy Rawls or you. And my one question is this. Do you feel that these quarterly Marine Fisheries Commission meetings that's open to the public with their comment, and obviously for you representing the Coastal Conservation Association and Glenn Skinner with the Fisheries Association, all these different groups, do you think it's productive? Or do you feel like you're being heard when you go to these meetings?
I think so. I think that the division staff is open to what the public wants to say. I think they sincerely are trying to gather some public information. That doesn't mean that they don't have some predetermined outcomes in their own mind. I mean,
right.
When you're dealing with DMF staff, I mean, these are scientists. They've done the work. They may think they have enough information, but I do think they're trying to be open to the public. I think the Marine Fisheries Commission as a general rule, is open to what the public has to say. And again, but you have, it's a political body. You have people on the commission that feel like they're there to represent a specific constituency group. So
Right.
they may have their mind made up on how they think things need to be done, but at the same time,
Let me jump in because you brought up a very good point. This is a consortium, a group of different political ideologies. Oftentimes, we have science, yes, but even within science, they can have their own ideologies.
right, that's correct. And you've got a little bit of a conflict between the staff and the commission as well. I mean, you've got one body that's a scientific body that's trying to bring forward information that they think is the best available information, but then you've got a political body that's making decisions based on more of a policy and how that plays with the public. So
you brought up another good point. The science world is dealing with the best available information. God, guys, gets so frustrated. Do you think, now this is a broad stroke statement, so you can punch holes in it. Do you think the division, for the most part, or the scientific community is getting the best available information?
I think there's some gaps in their data collection, obviously. We always say that you're never going to have exact science when you're dealing with fisheries.
Right.
It's not like counting trees. It's not like managing forests. We will never know exactly how many fish there are in the sea.
Right.
But I think they have some programs, and again, I don't know how much of this is still going on, but their survey programs and their own data collection programs where they're going out and sampling and trying to get some real world data. But I know there's gaps in that, and there's funding there's funding handicaps that they have that, if they had all the people that they needed to do all the observations that they need to do, then maybe we would have better science. But I think there's always going to be room for more.
Well, I'll just leave you with this, that the decades that I've been involved with fisheries and fisheries management, probably the number one sentiment I hear from fishermen on both sides of the fence, if there is just only two sides, is they're frustrated, like they're not being heard. And I understand that a lot of times they don't understand the other side of the fence. They don't know what the biologist is saying or whatever. But that just even today, even before this interview, I saw people talking about that they're not being heard. So what's the point? What is the point?
Well, and I think too, one of the things when you talk about the science, and as we get into talking about the fisheries management plans that the commission is working on right now, we have an over reliance on a stock assessment program in North Carolina. It takes too long to make decisions. We don't have the staff at this point, is my understanding. We don't have a stock assessment scientist on staff anymore. But trying to make decisions on what's best for the health of the resource when you're waiting on a stock assessment to guide you on that, I think that makes it a slow process. There's a lot you can do with like trends analysis. Like if we're looking at blue crab, for example, and that the landings have declined precipitously since the peak back in the 1990s. It tells you got a problem and there needs to be some adjustments. And you don't have to wait for a stock assessment to tell you that there's a problem. That's one of the concerns that I see.
One thing I want to touch on, well, it's actually at the I've got your news, your press release, what you sent out in your emailer. And by the way, I like your emailer a lot. It's a classic press release type of thing of who, what, where, when, why, and how. Just the facts, ma'am. Now I understand what's going on. But one of the things I think is the first thing at the meeting Wednesday is the MREP, the Marine Recreational Information Program. Folks are going to be there. And I'm excited about that because another thing I hear a lot is people say, where did they get that survey information from? So here's a chance to find out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of criticism, rightly in a lot of ways, with the way we do recreational data collection. And there, once again, the feds are supposedly working on how to improve that program. But yeah, that's been quite a challenge for fisheries managers in North Carolina to try to manage our fisheries based on data that now is they're saying it's not accurate. It's not giving us a true picture of what's going on, and it is frustrating for everybody that we're trying to make decisions on this data and we need to get a better program in place.
Does the CCA have a preferred methodology or suggestions to what needs to be done to get better data?
Yeah, we like the idea of where you've seen some of the Gulf Coast states going towards a more state-managed recreational data collection program. I know there's something in the works at DMF that was legislatively mandated that we put in a new program. It would be, I think that it would be smart for DMF to work with the feds that already have the MREP program in place. How can we collect data in North Carolina that helps make that program better? So that's kind of direction I'd like to see us go.
And just for point of clarification and make sure that I'm clear, are you talking about on the recreational side of having to report catch?
Yeah. And I think that the survey program that MREP has in place, if North Carolina could somehow work with the feds to make the program better for North Carolina, that's the direction we need to go. And, the same thing on the commercial data collection. I think there's some things in place there to try to report, to capture some of this data that's unreported at this point.
Now, in the meeting that's coming up, hopefully it's coming up because we're recording this interview on Monday the 17th. The weather forecast looks interesting. The Raleigh-Durham area is under a winter storm advisory. They're even talking about Kitty Hawk Wednesday night, Thursday, getting snow and ice. So we'll see if the meeting goes on. But there are a lot of areas to be covered. There's going to be oysters. There's going to be clams. There's going to be blue crab. I would assume false albacore. Now I'm assuming that the CCA would be focusing more on things like the false albacore, the southern flounder, and the speckled trout, and maybe not so concentrated on the shellfish I just mentioned. Or maybe I'm off base.
Yeah, that's true from an overall standpoint. We do have an interest in the oyster and clam plan. Certainly the oyster plan, if you read through that information and you read about how important these oyster reefs are to several things. Number one being, water quality. They're certainly filter feeders and helping contribute to better water quality. They provide tremendous fish habitat. We've lost a lot of these natural oyster reefs in our waters. I mean, if you look at, the coast-wide, East Coast, the whole East Coast of the United States, and you see where the historical range of where these oysters used to be, we've lost, over 90% of the natural oyster reef. So I think that if the division is proposing some things that can help protect those native oyster reefs, we'd be absolutely in support of that. But you're correct. A lot of the focus from our members is on, what's going to happen with these finfish decisions.
And speaking which, from your emailer, and I've been encouraging everybody to get on the email list of whoever so you can see what's going on. It says agenda items for this meeting include approval of the draft Southern Flounder Fishery Management Plan, Amendment 4 for public and advisory committee review, final adoption of the Spotted Sea Trout Fishery Management Plan, Amendment 1. Now that's a mouthful. Let's start with flounder. The flounder season recreationally was shut in 2024. There's discussion or possibility of the allotment was scheduled for 2026 to be 50-50 between commercial and recreational, of having it this year in 2025. What are you looking at or or what input you want to give on this upcoming Marine Fisheries Commission meeting about southern flounder. What's hot for the CCA point to get across?
Well, I think the main point is the public is looking for some access to flounder. What happened last year is a result of the plan that was put in place in 2019. Obviously, it's our position that when that allocation was set, it really should have been looked at totally in reverse of what was actually implemented. So you had a 70-30 allocation split that was based on historical landings of southern flounder we're talking about. So it gave 70% of the allowable catch to the commercial sector and only 30% to the recreational sector. It's our opinion that the decades of declines that we saw in southern flounder were when you had that stock going completely into the toilet. You had 80 to 90% of the harvest was coming from the commercial sector. So it seems like logically you would not reward the people that have been most responsible for the decline in that fishery. It should have given it to the public if you're going to have a higher allocation. So to try to reallocate it now, I understand it's kind of it's kind of hindsight and trying to rectify something that was done to try to rebuild the stocks. We think first and foremost that the rebuilding plan that we have in place for southern flounder needs to continue. We're seeing now is a classic rebuilding trap that anglers and fishermen are getting caught in. If you talk to people that fish, they're saying there's plenty of flounder. I don't understand why we can't keep them. Why can't we take more? That sort of thing. And you should see that. You should see the stocks coming back if this plan was working at all. And so I think the conservation plan that's in place needs to continue to see that stock to continue to rebuild, and you're going to see more and more fish being caught.
Let me ask you this: it might just be me, but at first there was a 73% overall reduction of take of southern flounder. I didn't hear much barking when that happened. I started hearing people bark when the allocation was different, when it was not 50-50, when it was 70-30, even 60-40, and over a period of time. That doesn't make sense to me. It seems like the first thing you'd really be pitching a fit if there was over the 73% reduction.
Well, I think that what happened is for decades, they just kicked the can down the road on southern flounder when everybody was sounding alarms. And this goes back to what we talked about, that, the science versus the politics. The scientists were saying, the stocks are in trouble. We're overfishing. There are overfished stocks. And there was a resistance to do anything meaningful to try to reverse those trends until we got to 2019. And I'll give credit to Mike Leffler, who is now the deputy director of DMF. He was the southern flounder biologist at the time in 2019 when he said, "Folks, we're way beyond arguing about the science. If we don't do something now, we're in danger of losing this stock altogether." And that's when the 72% had to go into place. Now, I also heard Brent Fulcher at that last meeting say, what we really need to do is shut it down for 2 years for everybody. Let's just have a complete moratorium. And I was like, well, that actually would have made sense, but we were too far down the road in the FMP process, and that wasn't considered. If you had done that in 2019, the stocks could have been rebuilt a whole lot faster, and we wouldn't be fighting over these crumbs and having these allocation fights and that sort of thing. But it all came about because there was a resistance to do anything to try to stem the tide on the overfishing.
Well, the thing, and I asked Glenn about this as well, and I haven't done the interview with Kathy Rawls yet, but I'm going to ask her this as well. Whenever I hear, or the general public hears a problem about overfishing or stock status is decline, regardless of what fish it is, it's always seems to be in between commercial and recreational, or both, one of the three. I never hear anybody talking about water quality. Now, you touched on it when we were talking about oysters. Is this, like the Marine Fisheries Commission's meeting, is that the place to bring up water quality? Or is there yet another department we got to go to and go, hey, because the coast of North Carolina is the number one vacation destination. It is the number one relocation destination. So it is exploding in its population and development. Now, I'm not an anti-development guy or an anti-vacation guy, but it has an effect on the water quality. What's being done there?
Yeah. No, there all these things factor in. I mean, you're absolutely correct. I mean, all of it contributes to pressure on the resource. And I think what the Division of Marine Fisheries and the Marine Fisheries Commission has to do is what's within their control. So you do have other agencies within the state that are responsible for clean water and those types of water quality issues. So the division can't change that. I mean, like I said, they can do something with oyster restoration if they want to, that'll help contribute to that improvement. But they do have one of the things that is overarching in a lot of this is the CHIP plan, Coastal Habitat Protection Plan. So you have multiple agencies, state agencies, the DMF being one of those, that are trying to do what they can for coastal habitat protection. And so they all have to work together on these issues. And the Coastal Development Commission or the Clean Water Group, I'm forgetting the acronyms right now, but they have to focus on their part of that plan, and they all have to work together on these issues.
So I need to do my homework. So there is communication in between departments. Water quality folks are listening to DMF folks, and DMF is listening to water quality folks. So say with a fishery management plan, well, they can. That's a subject for another time because we're talking about another department and another thing. Let's move forward. I wanted to get into speckled trout. We all are highly aware that for the first time since I think 2018, we had a cold stun event. We don't know exactly what the damage has been, depending on the area you're in, depends on the effect that it had. But we have a fishery management plan amendment 1 coming up. What are you looking for or want to hear? What do you want to hear coming up in this Marine Fisheries Commission quarterly meeting?
Well, we should be at the tail end of that plan development. I do, it should come back. It's been through the whole circuit of advisory committees. It's been through the secretary. It's been through legislative review. So it should come back to the commission now for just final approval. Now, I am hearing some concerns being raised about the slot limit. There's a lot of people concerned about that, whether that's going to be effective or not. That was accepted on the recreational side. It was put in for commercial. I'm hearing some concerns that could lead to a lot more dead discard mortality in the commercial net fishery that may be counterproductive to ending overfishing in that stock. It's not overfished, but they do need to address overfishing. And I think they were looking at how to make things equitable between the user groups. And again, all of these things seem to come back to, allocation issues instead of, what do we need to do that's best for the resource? What do we need to do that's best for protecting this fishery? And there's a lot of pressure on that stock right now. We know more recreational anglers are targeting them. More commercial fishermen are targeting them because you see closures in other areas, particularly like flounder. So I think that there may be some things that are brought back up for discussion, but we'll see. I think that the cold stun protocol that we have in place is very helpful. It's good that the director took action and went ahead and closed that fishery. For people that don't follow this as closely as others, the main reason to do that is to try to take some pressure off the fish that do survive. These are fast growing fish. If we can have some spawners that did survive the cold stun, give them the springtime to try to produce at least one spawn before we start harvesting again. So I think that's a good thing to have in place. And
just for a point of clarification for everybody, Kathy Rawls, the director of the Division of Marine Fisheries, has proclamation authority, I think within 48 hours. Right now it's June 15th was when they're expecting to open up speckled trout. It might be June 30th, but that gives the trout 2 times to spawn. And I believe speckled trout, I mean, within like their first year, they grow to about a foot in length. From the time they're born for a year, they're about a foot in length. So that's a real good thing. I did want to touch on one thing. The Wildlife Resources Commission in the inland waters, they do not have proclamation authority, and they got to go through a process. And so the earliest that they could close down inland waters to speckled trout due to the Cold Stone event is something like May 1st. Does the CCA have any comment on that?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we think is a legislative fix that needs to be made for the Wildlife Resources Commission. Their director needs to have the same proclamation authority. And again, that is generally granted by the commission to the director. So we have it in the plans. The Marine Fisheries Commission has agreed in this case to give the director of the Division of Marine Fisheries proclamation authority to act. And they need the same thing on the Wildlife Resources Commission side. They've tried to get the legislature to address that in the past. It's been fought by certain folks for whatever reason, but that would certainly make things a little easier for them to react instead of having to go through that whole temporary rulemaking process you talked about.
What would the Spotted Sea Trout Fishery Management Plan Amendment 1, if you could take a magic wand and wave it over it, what would you change?
I think that if you're going to take out the slot limit for the commercial sector, I think you can get the reductions that they're looking for by doing some sort of season closure, some sort of seasonal closure instead of the slot limit, and get the reductions that are needed on that side. I'm not sure that I'm not convinced, as a lot of people are not convinced, that just weekend closures is going to get you anything, because I think you just change fisherman behavior. If I tell you you can't fish Saturday and Sunday, then it means you're going to go fishing Monday and Tuesday, right? So you're going to make up the effort's going to be redirected. So I think you'd have to have, if you don't like the slot limit because you don't want the dead discards, then you're going to have to look at some sort of seasonal closure.
It's interesting you made comment about changing fishermen's behavior. I was talking in a show we just did less than a week ago with Captain Joe Shute, who used to be a commissioner, and I believe it was on the subject of flounder, mine is speckled trout, excuse me, that he was talking about. He had warned that the fishing pressure would switch, and he says it's come true that guys now are fishing for black drum and sheep's head. So obviously, I mean, if a species is having a problem, you want to take the pressure off of them, but the fishing itself hasn't changed. They're still fishing, it's just a different fish.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. We see that. We call it fishing down the food chain. You see, one restrictions on one fishery is just going to redirect effort onto another fishery. And that's, that's a good segue into like false albacore. That the reason that the false albacore rule making was put into place was because we don't know how much pressure is going to start building in that fishery. We're already seeing increased landings on rec side and the commercial side. It used to be more of a catch and release recreational fishery, and now there's folks keeping some and taking them home. There seems to be a market developing for those fish on the commercial side. So that's the whole reason for having some sort of proactive measures in place to try to address these issues before they become a problem. And that seems to be, how we've managed our fisheries in North Carolina for decades has been, well, we don't do anything until we have a problem. And then we start to have to deal with these draconian measures to shut fisheries down. Let's do something that's proactive and get out in front of it before things become an issue.
I found, by the way, that the fishermen, if they know it's well, I remember when red drum became real popular down in Louisiana, black and red fish became real popular. All of a sudden, boom, we're hitting up on them. Then fishermen caught on to the concept of catch and release, that, hey, this drum I'm holding, this 30, 40 pounds, is 30, 40 years old and conservation minded, no problem. As long as, we adapt to that, and we like doing that. So we just got to get the word out. I do want to make mention of this. The North Carolina Fisheries Association, the Commercial Fishing Trade Group, been talking with Glenn Skinner. They send out like every 3, 4, 5 days in their emailer one specific fish that's going to be addressed at the Marine Fisheries Commission, and they commented on it. And what struck me about false albacore, they say no stock assessment, reliable estimates of abundance or mortality to base management on, no fishery management plan. Management triggers trip limits and creel limits are arbitrary without the necessary information to make these decisions. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that. Like I said, when we started talking about this over-reliance on stock assessments, it's like we say, well, we don't have a stock assessment, so we can't do anything. Or we have a stock assessment, then we argue about whether the stock assessment is accurate or not. They take the same position on, like speckled trout. They're like, well, you got different metrics that are being used in different stock assessments. So how do we know what's right? So if you're going to be paralyzed by the fact that you don't have the exact science that you need to make decisions, then when are you ever going to make a decision? So I think that you can look at these trends analysis. You can look at these things like if we see, an increased pressure, we see increased landings on false albacore, then you have the mechanism in place to say, hey, wait, let's take a pause before we start getting into overfishing or overfish status of this stock. Let's take a pause and take a look at what needs to be done. That's what we're talking about, is putting some guardrails in place that say, let's be proactive instead of always reactive.
Well, one of the things that no matter what you're doing, just keep doing that. And then over the years, you can see trends that develop off of doing that. It might not be the best thing to do, but you got to do a thing.
Right.
All right, Glenn, I'm sorry, David, we're running out of time. Any last comments you'd like to make about the upcoming Marine Fisheries Commission, a standpoint from the CCA? What would you like to mention?
Well, I think that, again, we've got a good commission in place. I think we've got some good resource-minded folks there. I think the division is trying to bring forward some conservation plans to help with these stocks. And I know that the challenges are great. As you mentioned, we got more and more anglers getting on the water every year. We've got coastal development. Everybody I know that lives up here in Raleigh is planning to retire and move to the coast. So they're leaving here and coming down there. So the pressure is going to be there, and it's a lot for the division and the Marine Fisheries Commission to have to deal with. But we appreciate their efforts on behalf of the resource and hope that they will keep that first and foremost in their mind, and that we get past these issues being about how do we divide up the crumbs that we have left, and let's build a healthy resource.
David, thanks for talking with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill.
Certainly hope you enjoyed that interview with David Sneed, the Executive Director of the Coastal Conservation Association of North Carolina. Don't forget to go to my YouTube channel where all of the videos are housed, and click on the post. That's where you can see all of the latest polls going on, such as which with gill nets, such as with in regards to the Division of Marine Fisheries on the job performance. Where do you fish? What type of fish you like to go fishing for? All sorts of things go there. I'm Bill Hitchcock. Until next time, see ya.
Post your questions, comments, and concerns here on YouTube, or email them directly to Bill Hitchcock at this address.